pretty much everything is coming back in terms of offensive production. And Mr. Haydad specifically talked about, looks like Malik Heath is coming back. And like within the hour, maybe within a couple of hours, Malik Heath made it official with a statement that said, first off, I want to thank my mama and siblings for sticking with me through the tough time. And to Mississippi State fans, thank you all for everything. And to the coaches, thank you for giving me an opportunity to play in the SEC. But I think I should enter the transfer portal and play my last year somewhere else. Hashtag Hail State 4L. So Malik Heath, part of the 2018 class. This past year, 34 catches, 442 yards, 5 touchdowns. Over the course of a couple of seasons, he caught 71 balls for 749 and 8 scores. Talented player. And he was locked in and healthy and engaged. Malik Heath, really good player. But he wasn't always healthy and wasn't always locked in and wasn't always engaged. What does this mean for State?
You mentioned that 2018. You obviously went to JUCO and came back in 2020. It's funny when you think about that class. State signed 3 4-star receivers that were going to reshape their passing game. Malik Heath, Stephen Guidry, and Devontae Jason. Didn't quite work out that way for Mississippi State. For Heath, he's the guy, you sort of said it, when he was on, he was a good player for Mississippi State. Of course, had that really bad car wreck over the holidays, and I thought maybe his career might be over. Then says he's going to, it started being rumored that he was going to be able to play again, and everything was leaning towards him coming back to State, and then this morning this news breaks. For MSU, he's the guy that by the end of the season, you saw Ra Thomas and Tulu Griffin sort of getting more snaps at that position than Heath was. So I don't think it affects State too terribly much. It's a guy you would have liked to have had back, veteran. You could count on him a little bit, but I feel like from a production standpoint, certainly somebody will be able to step in and give you the same number of catches and yards that he did a year ago. And then for Malik Heath, I'm not sure where he's headed. If I'm Will Hall, I've already made that phone call because I think Heath could be a difference maker at USM. But we'll see where he ends up.
I don't think this is the case, but I don't think we need to look at what Will Hall and Southern Miss are building as simply anytime a former player from the SEC becomes available, you immediately go that route. Because Will Hall has talked about the importance of culture and work ethic and building something that everybody believes in and all those things. And you got to make sure when you bring in a bunch of guys that they fall into those categories. But at the same time, in terms of talent, there's a lot of it there with Malik Heath.
Yeah.
He was there out of high school, and you, again, saw flashes of it on the field in his time at Mississippi State.
I think he could be a good player for Southern Miss if he ends up there. But we'll see where he ends up.
If he ends up at Southern Miss, we should start calling them Old Southern State.
Yeah, with the
Hail Toddy, guys.
Speaking of toddies, we need to get Haydad a hottie toddy or a hot toddy.
Hail to the toddy.
Careful there.
Yeah.
I do love the portal players, by the way. A lot of these guys that are doing their transfer announcements put Hail State for life or Vol for life or whatever. It's like
except for next year.
For life, then where are you going?
Yeah, well,
What do you mean for life? It's not even for next season.
Did you die?
But that being said, Heath and Mekhi Polk, that's it. That's all that you're losing. Now, for Polk, in Polk's case, obviously that's a lot of production, but some of the things we've been saying about Will Rogers, about how, if you're a quarterback in this offense, you're just going to throw for 4,000 plus yards. It's just the nature of the beast. Sort of the same thing with the receivers too, right? I don't know who there is, but somebody on the roster next year is going to catch between 80 and 100 passes. The leading receiver on this team. Now, who's that going to be? I don't know. Jaden Wally, Ra Thomas, Tulu Griffin. I don't know the answer to that, but it's going to be somebody.
I agree with you. I don't think you can belittle, though, the production of those two guys because you're talking about 1,500 yards and 14 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. That's a big part of the production that Will Rogers had through the air. So if it's going to be Jaden Walley and Tulu Smith, and could very well be
Tulu Griffin, sorry.
Tolu
Smith.
I do the Tolu Smith, Tulu Griffin interchangeable thing all the time.
I cover state. You're not alone. You're not alone.
Forgive me for that.
Mm-hmm.
But think about what has to be different. Jaden Walley's got to return to the form of the last half of his freshman year because he never got to that form this year. Had some touchdown catches, but there was no consistent production from him. And with Tulu Griffin, you got to get the guy on the field and get him the ball.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how much did we talk about that throughout the course of the season where you look and you're like, we see on special teams what he is capable of when he touches the football. Why do you not have him on the field? Well, maybe the answer was because you had other guys that were producing and it was a numbers game, whatever it was. But if somebody's going to fall into that category that you were just talking about of 80 to 100 catches and 1,000 yards receiving or 800 yards receiving and somewhere between 7 and 10 touchdowns, and it's one of those two guys, it is a massive step forward from what they did this year on the field.
And while I would agree with that, I mean, look at the stats from Mekhi Polk the year before at Cal. Not the same offense, obviously, but nobody knew who Mekhi Polk was. Nobody would have said preseason he was going to break every MSU receiving record for a single season. So, I think what's in the cards is this. Ra Thomas is going to change positions to the Z. He was an X last year. So was Tulu Griffin. So was Malik Heath. I think Tulu Griffin will probably start the year as that starting X receiver, and then you'll have Wally and Austin Williams in the slot. Jameer Calvin, who I don't know if we mentioned it, we were sort of talking about it, but is returning, so he's there in the slot as well. And then you'll figure out the young guys, the Teddy Knox, the Antonio Harmon. What does Marquez Dortch give you in year one? Your two transfers, Jordan Mosley and Justin Robinson, what are they going to be able to give you in year one? We'll see. One thing's for sure, State has 9 receivers on campus right now that were 4 stars in at least one recruiting service. I mean, that's more than they've ever had in the history of that might be more receivers than total 4 stars they've ever had in the history of the program. So they've got the talent there. Mike Leach is a coach who knows how to find those guys and get them the ball. So I expect a lot of production from Mississippi State. But you had the question, obviously, of it's great they have all the skill positions, but.
Yeah, so the but is, what are you going to do up front? That's something Jason mentions as well. Charles Cross is either going to be in Philadelphia or Baltimore or Seattle or Arizona or Minnesota or somewhere like that, protecting an NFL quarterback's blind side. Unbelievable year. Mm-hmm. Rhett Lashley didn't have a great year. And sometimes it was downright bad.
Rhett Lashley may have also had a bad year, but I haven't looked at the stats.
Scott Lashley. I'm just going to keep on doing it, man.
Where was
I'm just going to keep on screwing it up.
He was at SMU, wasn't he?
That's right.
I don't know if Rhett Lashley's numbers would have been a lot worse at right tackle than Scott Lashley's were. But no, the point
against Sam Williams, they wouldn't have been much worse.
We remember that last game where Sam Williams abused Scott Lashley, and there were other points this year where we were like, well, the penalties. But he was a starting right tackle that started every game in the SEC, and there was experience there. And so you got to replace that. And while some would say, well, I mean, you can plug anybody in there and it'll be better than it was, the bowl game doesn't necessarily point to that being true. And you got to replace Charles Cross. Yeah, they're a bunch of receivers, a bunch of talented receivers. You got skill in the backfield. You got skill at quarterback and numbers returning at quarterback. Mm-hmm. How are they going to get better on the offensive line?
You should be good in the middle. With Cole Smith and LaQuinston Sharp coming back for another year is a big boost for Mississippi State. But then at tackle, you're right. I think, if you go back and watch the Egg Bowl, Sam Williams, dominated Scott Lashley. Then State makes a change and puts Cam Jones out there, and I thought he did a much better job on Williams. So Cam Jones is probably going to go to right tackle. And then left tackle, I mean, if Percy Lewis can't get it done, the JUCO transfer that both State and Ole Miss were hot after, then I don't know. then you're going to have a big problem. You need that kid to come in and be good in the spring and be ready to go. You can't replace Cross all the way, but you got to at least be serviceable to good.